Welcome to The Blueprint, where we seek out individuals that are built to be the best, giving us tips and tools to excel, taking us to the next level of growth. All right, team, we're joined today by Jennifer Sparks, who is a VP of Global Executive Talent Acquisition, and she's going to be walking us through two different types of resumes.
What I found quite enlightening and never had thought about, the differences between an internal and external resume, and what really sparked to me and why I had reached out to her to kind of help and guide us is we've been talking a lot about reflections, goal setting, and how you get kind of from one point A to Z. And I think there's also been some conversation that our team has had of how do you even go about doing an interview, getting promoted, how do you stage yourself for that? So I think it kind of all kind of tied together. So I thought it would be good if you want to walk us through, Jennifer, on the differences of the two types of resumes and kind of how you go about them. And I'm sure we'll have lots of questions and insight as we go.
Well, thanks so much for inviting me to be a part of this podcast. I'm excited to join you all today. And Devin, you're right. I mean, I think we don't really spend a lot of time, right, thinking about our resume or how we can use that to build our brand. And normally, typically, when we are faced with thinking about leaving a company, that's when we start thinking about, I got to pull this resume together, right? I got to think about how I'm going to outline all my responsibilities and what I've done. And so that's usually what prompts us. And my thought is an external resume is really a tool to get your foot in the door, right? Your ultimate goal is to get an interview. A resume never gets somebody hired. However, an internal resume, which I think is something we don't think about, we don't spend time on. An internal resume is a wonderful tool that you can use not only for self-reflection, to begin to think about what have I done inside of the organization, what am I proud of, what did I accomplish? But it is ultimately a tool that can be used when you're looking to get promoted, when you're looking at the job boards and seeing what kind of opportunities are out there, being able to send that document to someone and say, hey, here's my internal resume. This is what I've done. I'd love to talk to you about the role you've got open, right? It really helps to kind of distinguish and set you apart, as well as helps you think about what have I done so that when that review period comes around at the end of the year, you're ready to go, right? You've got everything documented that you've accomplished over the last year to help you facilitate that conversation with your supervisor in a much more thoughtful and coordinated way.
In the reflection part is the piece that a lot of people miss and can be super valuable in a lot of different aspects. But I mean, how do you go back after the whole year's over and then try to build that? Or do you recommend like maybe a different period? Like what kind of points in time would you recommend for that reflection?
So when you're getting started with it, I think you have to be able to go back and like reflect over the last year or 2 years or 3 years as you're building it. But once you get that resume built, I highly suggest updating it every quarter, right? And the question I like to ask myself is, what am I most proud of, right? When I think back over the last 3 months, the last quarter, patting myself on the back, what did I do well? Right. And being able to document that in kind of an organized fashion. And then I also encourage people, and I do this myself, what do I wish I had done differently? Right. You start to use it as a tool for self-improvement, self-development, because much to maybe unpopular opinion, a lot of people believe that it is their supervisor's job to develop them inside of an organization. I would argue that it is your job to develop yourself. A good supervisor will help you, right? They'll ask the questions, they'll see the work, they'll kind of give you guidance. But I have to take control of my own destiny, right? I'm not going to rely on you to pull me along, right? I have to be proactive, step out, and really look for ways to build myself professionally. And so by asking myself those questions, what did I do well? What am I really proud of? Okay, what What might I have done differently? And then how can I put that into action next quarter, next month, next year, whatever that time frame might be.
And I think personally, like what you're mentioning about not waiting for your kind of supervisor manager to be the one to do it, because they're really not. I mean, personally, I feel like the more I've gone throughout my career and the further I've gone, the less and less they're going to do that. And they're just more there to support you and guide you. But it really becomes your responsibility. So the more and the further you want to go, you've got to take the ownership on yourself to learn, develop, and drive, and really be that self-motivator. Because you're right, there's less and less of it as you go. The expectation is, if you're going to be at that level, that you're driving yourself.
Can I give you an example maybe of a recent occurrence? So I had an individual on my team, just recruiter level, not a manager, just a basic kind of recruiter. And this individual decided that they were going to enroll in a master's program. They'd gotten their undergraduate degree, but this person was really looking to advance their career, loved the human resources field. So after several conversations, right, this individual took a risk. They stepped out of the organization, went and got their master's. It took them about a year. They went internationally to do it. They are now coming back into the organization. They're coming back into the organization inside of HR in a broader capacity, still touching my function, recruiting, but taking on additional responsibilities. And they're coming in at more of a senior manager, almost director level. That's a great example of someone who is on the upward trajectory of their career, felt like they needed to do their own professional self-development, took a risk at leaving, did it under a good circumstance, right? Left well. If you're going to leave an organization, leave well. And now they're coming back into the organization, into a higher position with broader responsibility. And the future for this individual is unlimited. It's exciting to see that growth within this person. But nobody did it for them. They had to do it for themselves. And I think there's a lot of fear, right? Sometimes wrapped around in taking that step, whatever it might be, finding a certification class, right? You don't have to leave your job, right? But you can find skills that you can acquire, certifications that you can acquire, additional experiences. I have someone right now in the Philippines, and they're working on public speaking. And we want to be able to advance that person. That person needs to be able to have conversations at high levels across the organization. So they came to me seeing that opportunity to develop, right? We're going to help them do that. But that person took the initiative. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, 100%. And I think even in this group of people we have here, I can give an example as well. I mean, Brittany herself, the one thing that drew me to put Brittany in the role she's in now is I went to go mention to her, we have these extra learnings that you can do. And I said, okay, have you done your intro to leadership? Yep, did that already. Have you done your account management intro? Yep, done that already. So somebody like that is a prime example of going out there, seeing what's available, because we have tons of stuff, and I'm sure a lot of organizations do, that it's available to you, but you have to be the one to go out there and do it. So, taking in that opportunity, not just to do it when your manager mentions it, but to already have done it, already have to ask the questions, already have taken that responsibility. Those are the types of leaders that are going to succeed.
It's interesting, and first of all, great job, Brittany, because that's exactly right. That's what you want to see in a future leader, someone taking kind of control of their career. I was surprised when I went to the head of HR in the Philippines to say, what kind of programs and learning opportunities are there for someone who's interested in, right, advancing their public speaking skills. We have programs, we have tools, we have learnings out there already developed. They're not always advertised. We may not always know that they're there, but if you'll take the initiative and the proactiveness to ask, to inquire, to show interest, I think you'll be surprised what kind of tools already are available to you for growth.
So going back to go back to more the internal and external resume. Yep. What do you think like the key differences is? You're like lining them out. You talked about like marketing yourself, but what would you say is you're trying to map that out? What's different for it?
So an external resume is going to really give a high level overview of your complete career history. An internal resume should really focus in detail on your current role or your tenure with your current organization, right? It should be much more detailed. There should be more information. There's information in an external resume I'm not going to put because it's sensitive information to the company I'm working in. I'm not going to give all the facts, the figures, the numbers. But in an internal resume, I am. And I tell people when you're building out your resume, again, asking yourself, like, not only what was I responsible for, what's my job, right? But what did I accomplish in this role, right? And that's where self-reflection comes in. You have to really think about what did I get done? How did I get it done? What were the challenges that I faced? How did I overcome those challenges? By asking yourselves those questions and kind of reflecting on that, you can get pretty fact-based, meaty around what specifically you accomplished in the role. And so that information should be much more in depth on an internal resume than an external.
Brittany had a question.
Yeah, so earlier you mentioned to kind of keep your internal resume updated at a quarterly basis. So if we're looking at an internal resume and, how do we know what to highlight in there if we have information from first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, so forth? How do we know which ones to really focus on?
It's a great question. I think that in my opinion, right, when I'm thinking about my own internal resume, I almost have two versions, right? I have my working version. That's where I'm keeping all of it. I may be with an organization. I've been with this current organization for 2.5 years. And in 2.5 years, my internal resume is pretty lengthy in terms of the things I've done and gotten accomplished and been responsible for. If you've been with an organization for a long time, you might just want to highlight, what you've done in your most current role if you're sending it on internally for someone to review, or if you're sitting down with your supervisor at the end of the year, right? To have it broken out by quarters, to have it detailed, right? This is what I accomplished, right? This is what you asked me to do. These were my KPIs. This is how I met my KPIs. Right. I think you have to kind of think about it from that perspective. So I don't know that I answered your question clearly. I have kind of my working document, which has all of my information thrown into it. And then I will tailor that internal resume based on what I'm using it for. If I'm using it to send to someone internally because I'm interested in a new position, I'm going to take all that data and condense it down to make it applicable to the role that I'm looking to apply for, right?
So it's almost kind of like a pick and choose adventure.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. It never hurts because to have all of that information in one place is really beneficial. And you and I both know that typically what happens is someone asks you, or you've got to put an internal resume together or even an external resume, and you're just sitting there and your mind's gone blank. What did I get done? Right? You can only think about probably the last month, the last week. True. Okay, I just finished this project, but what did I do 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 18 months ago, right? We forget to celebrate all those successes and record them. So, that's what an internal resume is for.
Thank you.
Also makes a yearly review pretty easy conversation to have as well, right? So if you're sitting down for your yearly review, I know Marlon's got his hand up. I don't know if it's for the yearly review comment or if it's for another, but I joke because Marlon and I are actually due for a yearly review conversation. So
Oh, there you go.
get your internal resume together, Marlon, so we can go over it. But no, I mean, there's a lot of accomplishments that a lot of them have had, and I think that's a great opportunity where you're not having to scramble at the end of the year to do your yearly self-reflection or your management conversation. The internal resume for me isn't just about applying for a job or a new department. It's a lot about getting eligible, right? I mean,
that's right.
You're using it for your yearly review. You can use it for reflection. You could use it for goal setting because of the specifics that go into the internal resume. That's why I was asking about the differences, is because those specifics are much more critical for those conversations.
That's right. And Marlon, I want to get to your question, but I want to say one thing, Devin, that I think is important. Another thing that this internal resume is really good for is to highlight the gaps for you. What am I missing? What opportunities have I not had that I need in order to get where I want to go? I mean, I'm always asking myself, what do I want to be when I grow up, right? Where am I going? What's my North Star, right? And so as I think about that, I'm always thinking about what kinds of experiences do I need to add to my resume in order to make myself internally marketable for that next role. So an internal resume does a great job of highlighting your gaps as well. Marlon.
Yeah, not so much a question, but realization as you were talking. I think Brittany and I were talking about the same line, like what do you put in there? Because in a yearly perspective, imagine you can do a lot of things, but on a quarter to quarter perspective, it may be hard for us to realize the achievements that we've done, especially if some of those are actually considered quote-unquote expectation, at least to us, people who are in ourselves driving internal improvement. Like this group in particular, I can say we're overachiever in a way where we always want to outdo our previous performance. And so anything that we've done are considered expectations for us, at least that this is expectation, but it may not be in a bigger picture. Like we may be doing stuff that we don't consider as an achievement or a highlight, just because for us it is basic, but for others it's actually a big impact because we saved the company X number of dollars that nobody would have thought doing just because you're thinking at it as a standard practice, but in an overall perspective it actually makes a difference. And I think that critical because very important. We don't sell ourselves short just because we look at ourselves at that high expectation perspective, look at it in that big picture. I think that allows you to think about more things that you've done that you give yourself credit for. So just to add that to that conversation.
Marlon, I think that's such a great point. I think oftentimes, especially for people who are driven, right? My standard is high. So if I'm just meeting that standard, I may not say to myself, well, I should pat myself on the back for that, right? But yet I really should, because that shows I'm driven, right? I'm moving, I'm accomplishing. What are my year over year, right? Those growth numbers, those facts and figures that you can weave in there. To you, that might just be getting the job done. But to the organization, that's a big deal. We need people who can get the job done because that's what keeps the company going. So being able to document that in a very fact-based way is a critical part of building your internal resume.
So I guess on that kind of in that direction, Marlon, you're talking about how you could save the company money and that's something you want to call out. But I think there's also something to be said of how do you get kind of your name out there in your organization so that way you have more things to put on your internal resume. Because I'm sure if you're looking at an internal resume, and a lot of them are probably the same, I mean, the metrics are the same. You have this particular person, whether it be director, supervisor, agent, they have the same metrics. I'm going to guess that somebody that's gone outside of that box and has something else to throw on there, how they've saved money through a project, has a much better weight, right?
It does. I think there are some ways inside of the organization that we can get involved, or that you can differentiate yourself. Let me say that, because it's really what you're speaking to is how does someone differentiate themselves from maybe their peers or counterparts inside of an organization. One is by, again, like we mentioned earlier, taking initiative, finding other trainings, learnings, certifications, right? Putting those things underneath your belt. Also, I mean, our organization has a lot of things that you can do. There are ERGs you can join. There are initiatives that you can start to get involved in that start to develop yourself and help you become known outside of your site, your geo, your functional area, right? It exposes you to leaders in other parts of the world doing other things, right? And slowly but surely, you can begin to build relationships with people that aren't necessarily sitting to the right or the left of you. And that relationship building skill, to me, is a key component to thinking about how do I have my internal resume, right, which is my own branding, but then you got to do something with it. And it's all about, it's about relationships, right? And it's about being able to network and get to know people and listen and hear what opportunities are going on and put yourself out there. Sometimes putting yourself out there is the bravest thing you can do, even when it doesn't go your way, right? And I tell this to my kids all the time, right? They're young adults, they're in their 20s, and they're in that early professional career, just getting started. And I keep telling them, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to raise your hand, even if you don't get picked, even if you're not selected. Keep trying, pick yourself back up, because eventually it'll pay off.
I can tell you for myself, I struggle with that because I just want to stay in my little bubble.
Yes,
and
you're not alone.
I like to go to people who like I know or who have been referred to me from someone that I know. So it's difficult for me to I see names, like I know of people, but it's hard for me to reach out to them just because then I'm like, I just want to stay wrapped up in my little cocoon over here.
Oh, Brittany, you're not alone. Everyone out there listening is like, yes, me too. I'm a very rare person, right, who's completely comfortable just throwing themselves out there. Most of us we want to stay in our lane, surrounded by the people we feel safe with. And that's why I say, use the word brave. I think it takes a lot of bravery and a lot of internal courage to be able to think, what's one new relationship I can form this quarter, right? You start small. You start really small. What's one new relationship? What's something about the organization that we're a part of that really interests me? We're doing a lot with EI right now. There's a huge amount of opportunity for people, even at the customer expert level, to get involved with the EI initiative. So thinking about listening, paying attention to what's going on in the organization, and then just saying one thing I'm going to do differently this month, this quarter, right? Whatever that time frame might be. It's baby steps, right? No one needs to jump into the deep end of the pool and start, swimming and treading water. Exactly. It's just a wade in, get your ankles wet, right? But you'll find that the more you do it, the more comfortable you become. It's a muscle we have to exercise, right? Putting ourselves out there.
The other thing too, with that comfort level, I think there's also this kind of perception that it happens even in external resumes too, that you just don't want to. Where's that line between overly cocky and confident, right? And particularly, I think externally, it's easier. I feel that when I put on an external resume, it's easier for me to say I did this, I did that, because it's externally. Like, there's no one over there for me to give credit to, right?
Right.
But internally, I think that's where it gets a little difficult in going from even the resume and taking it the next step further, which would be the interview or conversation, right? That happens internally. People get a little uncomfortable discussing the fact that they were able to achieve these things. Especially, I find the better leader you are from an EQ perspective, the more discomfort that might bring for you. How do you kind of get past that? Because ultimately, if you don't say that you've done these things, you're not going to get picked, you know?
You're not going to get picked. You're exactly right, Devin. I always say that when you're putting a document like this together, whether internal or external, it is an opportunity to kind of brag on yourself in a way. There is that fine line, right? There is certainly a fine line. However, when I'm interviewing someone and they talk in we's, we did this, we did that, we did this, I usually stop them and I'll say, oh, wait, hold on just 1 second. Tell me specifically, what was your role in that project? You know, we led this project, which grew the organization from X to Y. Tell me who the we is and what role did you play in that? And, it usually kind of stops the person and then they have to kind of think about it. So that's the question I would ask you. If you find yourself putting this together, rarely are we doing something completely on our own. Most of the time, right, we are a part of a part of a group of people working together. So what is the role that you played in that initiative, in that group, in that project? Those are the questions I like to ask, especially in an interview if I hear the we word a lot, because I do want to know, right? Is it just we did this and you were actually sitting on the sidelines watching it happen and you can talk to it, but you didn't really actually do the work? Or did you do the work? And if so, what was it specifically that you did? And so those, again, it all goes back to self-reflection, Devin, which you talked about in the very beginning when we kicked this off. Yeah. You have to be able to ask yourself questions and then answer those questions. What did I do? What role did I play? What difference did I make? What were my contributions to this? And, asking yourself those self-reflecting questions and then just getting it down on paper, even if it's not pretty, you can always polish it up later, right? That will ultimately help you get there.
Those are fantastic self-reflection questions to ask. So, I mean, in the beginning, you said, what am I most proud of, right? I mean, I think that's awesome to ask, right? What do you wish you could have done differently? And then like those drill downs, what did I do? What role did I play? What difference did I make? What were my contributions? I mean, those are all things that, goal setting 101, project evaluation, internal resumes, etc. So those are all fantastic. Thank you for those.
Yeah. And one other thing I would maybe highlight on that, if you do the hard work, right, and quarterly, you're keeping that internal resume up to date, or even if you just do it annually, when you do have the opportunity to sit down in an interview, you're going to be able to articulate what you've done in a much stronger, clearer, more concise way than others who may be interviewing for the same role. Because you will have done that self-reflection ahead of time versus trying to do it on the spot in an interview, which for most of us doesn't go as well as we, want it to right there in the moment.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jennifer, for taking the time. I know, again, your schedule's pretty packed. Vice President of Global Executive Talent Acquisition, Jennifer Sparks. You could find her on LinkedIn as well. You've got a pretty large following there for sure. I think just over 4,000 followers. So you should have a few more after today, I'm sure.
Well, thanks so much again for inviting me.
All right, thank you.
For content suggestions, please reach out to The Blueprint at teleperformance.com.